The story begins when the master of the Su family, Chang King, infiltrates the palace, hoping to find evidence to clear the Su family's name. However, Chang King was a certified waste of sperm who only wanted to inherit the Su family's wealth. He quickly spotted a palace maid and threw something in the water beside her. Once she was distracted, Chang King reached down and showed her the stuff of nightmares his face. The maid's soul immediately left her body, so Chang King planned to borrow her likeness. He changed into the body of a girl, copying the maid's uniform. However, he came out extra small since it was his first time as a girl. Once he got the hang of it, Chang King began searching the palace for the case files when he accidentally stumbled into the emperor's chamber. There, a female's voice calls out to ask who is there. Chang King claims to be the manservant and says he got lost, but the woman doesn't buy it and asks who he is. At this, Chang King decides to knock her out and charges for her, but a dagger suddenly flies toward him and almost cuts off his third leg. Chang King is shocked to discover the girl had a guard with her the whole time, so the guard charges for him and cuts a part of his robe. As Chang King tries to evade her attacks, he notices the royal robe nearby and figures out what's happening. He then gets clapped hard by the guard and lands next to the girl who he realizes is the emperor. He's surprised to discover the emperor is a woman, while the girl, Jinyu, wonders if he is also a man. Jinyu is certain it was a man who spoke to her, so she decides to test out her theory by seeing if Chang King has any wood to stop. Chang King narrowly escapes and confesses to being a lowly thief. Jinyu then tells her guard to stand down since he clearly lacks enough balls to assassinate her. The girl asks if he thinks she'll let him go, but Chang King has his own way of handling things. He transforms into the male version of the emperor and warns Jinyu that people might discover her identity as a woman. He then asks which is easier to believe, whether she's the emperor or he is. Jinyu warns that she could have him unalived for trying to negotiate with her, but Chang King warns that he'll reveal her secret. Jinyu then gets a wicked look in her eye as she begins to raise alarm of an assassin in the palace. The guards outside immediately rush toward the room, causing Chang King to panic. However, when the men bust in, they mistake Chang King for the emperor and try to protect him. Later, Jinyu's guard announces that the assassin has been caught and tells the men to retreat, so they're back to being alone. Suddenly, Jinyu rushes out, calling Chang King His Majesty and asking if he's alright. Chang King wonders how Jinyu dared to run out in women's clothes when Jinyu suddenly grabbed him and began rejoicing over his safety. She suggested he return to the palace and rest, leaving Chang King confused about what was going on. Later, Chang King waits in a room, wondering why Jinyu wouldn't just let him go. Suddenly, he notices the Su family's documents and wonders what they're doing in the emperor's room. When he looks through, he sees the mountain of evidence and witnesses against the Su family, but is convinced they didn't do it. Suddenly, Chang King hears someone approaching and wonders who it is. He quickly stashes the case files and turns to find the emperor's consort, Bai Ling, who says she's there to service him. Chang King gets his giggity face on when he suddenly wonders how on earth the female emperor managed to get consorts. Suddenly, Bai Ling throws a tantrum, insisting he can take her body, but he'll never have her heart. Chang King gets frustrated and wonders what her deal is when he notices her earrings and realizes she's the princess of the Northern Bai tribe, given to the emperor as a gift. Chang King realizes Bai Ling might be trouble, especially since he still needs to clear the Su family's name. He then tells Bai Ling he's not in the mood and advises her to rest early, but this only triggers her as she demands to know why he went to so much trouble to get her. Frustrated, Chang King grabs her hand and pushes her onto the bed as he lies on top of her. Chang King then holds down her hands so her melons are front and center. As he rubs his fingers on her thigh, he asks her what she thinks he wants to do with her. Bai Ling demands to know what he's trying to pull, so Chang King reminds her that he doesn't need her heart, just her body. When Bai Ling realizes her first time might go to such an ugly face, she passes out. At that moment, the female emperor walks in on them, causing Chang King to start kissing enough of her rear end to contract and sigh. However, the emperor says she's just one of his consorts, Jinyu. Chang King immediately bows and insists that she's too beautiful to be handled by a commoner, so Jinyu calls for her guard to remove the traumatized Bai Ling. She then asks if he didn't swipe her V card because he's into men, causing his nose to leak blood. Chang King then changes the subject and suggests she must have other plans for him other than plowing her consorts. Jinyu agrees and explains that she doesn't want anyone to discover her identity, but asks who he thinks will die first if it's revealed. Chang King admits he'd be first on the chopping block, so Jinyu grabs him and demands to know why he risked breaking into the imperial palace. Chang King wondered if he should reveal the matter of the Su family, but was afraid she'd hold it as leverage over him. Since she hadn't seen his real face, she couldn't discover his real identity, but it also made him question why the Su family documents were in his room. Jinyu then suggests he uses his disguise to help her for 3 years, and she'll give him anything he wants in return. She gives him until the next day to think about it as she opens a secret passage. She then tosses a book containing the palace's secret passageways and warns him to keep it confidential. Inside the book, Chang King finds descriptions of Bailing that makes him want slide under the covers with a sock. The next morning, Jinyu attends the morning court where a man accuses the Su family of causing a rat plague. Jinyu recognizes the family and laughs at how Chang King has been amusing her lately. She then insists that her consort's room was infiltrated by an assassin, and that's what she'll be investigating for now. Jinyu's guard moves close to see if she needs any help, but Jinyu tells her she'll be fine without her. Meanwhile, Chang King rests in the Emperor's room when another consort named Xiang arrives, worried about the news of the Emperor's health. Chang King figures Jinyu must be up to something again, but since Xiang wants to take care of him, he figures he might finally enjoy the perks of being Emperor. He then remembers that the book said Xiang was a flirtatious person, and sure enough, Xiang was already offering to feed him porridge with her spoon. However, Xiang is actually extremely manipulative, so he tells her he's still busy with work and asks her to leave the food behind. Xiang worries that he might not like the food she made and suggests he try it first, but before she can feed him, another consort named Luo arrives. When Luo and Xiang make eye contact, they immediately start beefing while Chang King wonders just how many cheeks he's supposed to defile. Xiang tells Luo that she can take her rice cakes back since the Emperor would have his mouth full with her cream, but Luo insisted there was nothing special about her tea and rice. Chang King tries to break up the fight by saying he'll eat both their buns, but Luo isn't satisfied, so she grabs one of her cakes and shoves it into Chang King's mouth. Luo insists it was just a leftover from the kitchen, but asks how it tastes. As Chang King chews, he remembers something important from the book. Luo is the greatest beauty in the capital, and when she came to the palace, several men broke their brushes in heartbreak. However, even though Jinyu deems her lovely, she's even more useless than he is. Xiang tells the Emperor that she'll be taking her leave, which makes Luo happy until someone else comes in and scares the girls into Chang King's arms. It turns out to be another consort named Shiya, making Chang King wonder how Jinyu pulled so many baddies without even having the right equipment. Just then, Chang King notices yet another food box and can't bear to take another bite. When Shiya notices his reaction, she tells the other girls they should leave the Emperor to work while they have a nice chat. Luo seems extremely scared of Shiya and offers to return to the palace first. She trips and falls on the way out, but she eventually manages to get her 2 left feet to work together and run off. Xiang also seems nervous around Shiya and quickly offers to go first, leaving Chang King alone with Shiya. When Chang King looks at Shiya, he realizes Jinyu's harem might be the stuff of legend based on their beauty. He's even surprised she bagged someone as nice as Shiya and hopes Jinyu chooses her to be Empress. Unfortunately, when Chang King checks the book, he sees Shiya is highly calculative and most likely to figure out his flaws, which means he needs to stay the hell away from her. Later, Jinyu goes to see Chang King. When Chang King tries to address her as Her Highness, she gets mad and forces him to call her his consort. Then she asks if he's decided to take the deal or not. Chang King agrees to do it since Jinyu is the only one who can free his family, so she asks for his real name. When he tells her he's Chang King, she tells him to try copying her female form. Chang King instantly changes his form to match Jinyu, down to her clothes. Jinyu is impressed that even managed to nail her jiggle physics, but she sits him down and informs him his hair is off and he'd be recognized easily. Moments later, she says it's her first time styling someone else's hair as she finishes with it and calls it flawless. She then tells Chang King she's now the Emperor, making Chang King wonder who he's supposed to be. Jinyu then explains that he's now her consort and it's his turn to attend the bedchamber tonight. Moments later, Jinyu dumps a pile of memorials in front of Chang King, who insists the agreement was only to pretend to be Emperor. Chang King explains that everyone knows it's the consort's Jinyu's turn to get railed by the Emperor, so it's the perfect time for Chang King to review memorials and practice her handwriting. Chang King suggests changing back into the Emperor since he needs to review memorials. Jinyu agrees and starts changing her clothes, but warns Chang King never to change forms without her permission. As Jinyu laments about the hair she just styled, Chang King changes back to the emperor. Jinyu tells him to grind his own ink and they sit to discuss the job. Chang King practices her handwriting and Jinyu is impressed by how fast he was able to copy it. Since he's so capable, she tells him all the memorials have to be reviewed that day and walks off to get some rest. After going through the memorials, Chang King says there are 3 cases that need Jinyu's personal decision, including the Su family's case. Jinyu decides on the first 2 cases and asks what the Su family case is about. Chang King says the Su family case seems to have hidden secrets and asks Jinyu what she thinks. Jinyu then tells him to issue an order to delay the investigation of the Su family. Just then, Chang King points out that someone is hiding outside. Jinyu explains that it's just her good sister who's here to assassinate the emperor. Chang King's face appears like a swollen frog when he hears this and asks why her good sister would want to assassinate her. Sure enough, Chang King saw Bailing creeping around the bushes, so he told Jinyu to handle it herself. At this, Jinyu had an evil idea and began to cry out for the emperor not to come any closer. Chang King decided to play along and scooped her up, telling her not to waste his axe spray and scented sheets. Jinyu was surprised by how much nerve Chang King had, so she told him to be gentle since it was her first time. When Bailing heard this, she charged in to save Jinyu from the dragon in Chang King's pants. Chang King wondered what he should do next, so Jinyu told him to do whatever was necessary as she pretended to act like a scared consort. Bailing's bloodlust continued to flow toward Chang King's zipper, so he warned her to prepare to face the consequences of showing weapons to him. He then holds Jinyu hostage and threatens to strangle her if Bailing comes any further. Bailing tells Chang King to let her sister go, but he tells her to put down the sword first. When Bailing insists on challenging him, Chang King tells Jinyu to call her guards since he doesn't know how to fight. At this, Jinyu takes charge and grabs Bailing's hand, telling her to ask for forgiveness before it's too late. However, Bailing insists that it was fine for the emperor to ravage her body, but not Jinyu's. Jinyu tells her that even if she succeeded in her plan and rescued Jinyu, the emperor would surely cause chaos for Bailing and her family. At this, Bailing finally throws down her sword and cooperates. Moments later, they both sit before Chang King as Jinyu asks him to please spare Bailing's life. Chang King figures Jinyu wants him to forgive Bailing, but when he tries to agree, he notices the death glare coming from Jinyu. He quickly switches up and warns Jinyu that she might die for trying to protect Bailing, so Jinyu takes full responsibility and offers to serve him as repayment. Chang King tries to keep his cool, even though he's holding back a stroke from seeing Jinyu on her knees. Chang King then tells Bailing that she'll have to let her sister serve him as punishment. He tells her to imagine how much her sister will suffer on her behalf, and Bailing immediately pictures Beauty and the Creep, the rated R version. Bailing offers to serve Chang King too, but Chang King is worried he doesn't have enough liquid children to service the 2 lunatics at the same time. He then insists he can't allow someone who tried to take his life to service him, and asks her to leave. Bailing tries to object, but Jinyu assures her she'll be fine and sends her away. Later, Chang King apologizes to Jinyu for using her as a shield, as it was the only way to stop that white-haired nutcase. Jinyu asks how he felt when he held her, so Chang King assures her that his pants remained loose and dry. In response, Jinyu tells him not to casually touch her, unless it's a special situation. She then says this would be good training for Bailing, who is easily fooled by others' schemes. When that's settled, Jinyu tells him to get back to reviewing memorials. The next morning, Jinyu praises the emperor for being hardworking and warns him not to overexert himself. Chang King's soul loosely clings to his body as he asks for a break, so Jinyu suggests they switch places. After switching, Jinyu announces that she'll be taking a break and asks her servants to cancel the morning assembly. As she leaves, Chang King throws a tantrum while Bailing returns, looking for Jinyu. Later at Jinyu's chamber, Bailing apologizes to Chang King for causing all that trouble. Chang King tries to calm her down when Bailing points out that Jinyu now has a child too. However, Bailing promises to take care of Jinyu's child along with her own. Chang King asks Bailing what exactly she means by child, knowing full well his junk never got past his zipper. Bailing then explains that the elder told her that if a man and a woman sleep holding hands, they'll have a baby. Bailing asks if Jinyu is worried about having a good baby, but Chang King can't believe how little she knows about the act of baby making. He then tries to explain that sleeping while holding hands isn't enough to make a baby. Bai Ling is surprised to hear that while Chang King realizes he's dealing with the IQ of a fetus. However, he can't help but wonder why Jinyu is playing good sisters with Bai Ling when their people don't get along. Chang King wonders if he should directly ask Bai Ling for information that might risk him getting exposed. While he's deep in thought, Bai Ling asks how one does make a baby. Chang King tries to worm his way out of it, but Bai Ling begs with her puppy dog eyes. In response, Chang King asks if she knows the story of the storks. Back at the Emperor's chambers, Jinyu rests when she's informed of the arrival of the Imperial Doctor, Zhu. Zhu bows to greet the Emperor, so Jinyu tells him to check why she's not feeling well today. After Zhu examines her hands and feet, he determines that the weakness is a sign of laying pipe for too long. Jinyu's guard immediately fires back and accuses Zhu of saying nonsense, while Jinyu looks pleased. She then hopes the doctor spreads the news across the palace, hoping it'll get hard for consort Jinyu. Meanwhile, Chang King is about to take a bath when he gets the feeling that Jinyu is plotting against him. Suddenly, Bai Ling shows up and suggests they take a bath together. Chang King tries to turn down her offer, but Bai Ling tells her she forgot to bathe yesterday and Jinyu must be dirty from being mounted like an animal. Chang King has no choice but to agree, so Bai Ling thanks him for all the biology lessons he gave her earlier. She then suggests experimenting with her sister, making Chang King wonder what she means. Bai Ling brushes it off and offers to help Chang King wipe his body, so Chang King realizes Bai Ling is drooling a bit too much. When things get extra steamy, Chang King realizes Bai Ling's true relationship with Jinyu. Now, he worries that if Jinyu finds out he bathed with her, she'll order for his whole family to be executed. Chang King decides to endure silently for now. However, when he looks up, he sees Jinyu's bodyguard staring at him and wishes she'd just take his life already. Bai Ling asks Chang King to help wash her hair as usual, but Chang King realizes he has to escape, so he tells her it's time for consort Jinyu to return to the Emperor. Bai Ling laments that Jinyu has spent less time with her since she began the Emperor's favorite plot hole. Bai Ling's tantrum reminded Chang King of his little sister, making him realize it's been a while since he checked on his family. Chang King agrees to wash Bai Ling's hair for a little while and gives her a good rub. Suddenly, Xiang's palace maid calls out to invite Jinyu to lunch at her chamber. Chang King is surprised to hear this since the two consorts aren't close, so Bai Ling advises him not to go since Xiang must be trying to show off. Chang King figures last night's event must have spread and Xiang must be trying to save face. He remembers the last time he met Xiang as the Emperor and wonders what she's like behind the scenes. Bai Ling asks Chang King if he really needs to go, so he assures her he'll be fine. Xiang's maid continues to call for Jinyu, so Chang King shows up and tells her to lead the way. Later, when Chang King arrives at Xiang's chambers, he finds her dancing. The maid explains that Xiang is busy at the moment, but Chang King says he's in no rush as he plans to see what Xiang has up her sleeve. When Xiang finishes, Chang King praises her performance. Xiang wonders how Jinyu can be so happy at being ignored, so she tells Jinyu she's the one with true skills capable of making the Emperor miss court and abstain from the other consorts. Chang King is surprised to hear this, but Xiang tells him not to play dumb, as the Imperial Doctor revealed that the Emperor has been doing a little too much thrusting. Chang King insists he didn't plan for this to happen and promises that they will soon be able to service the Emperor again. Xiang tells Chang King that the other consorts hate him, but if he drinks the medicine in the bowl, she'll make sure they won't trouble her. She claims it's fertility medicine so that the Emperor can have a child, but Chang King can tell it's an abortion drug from his many times buying it. Xiang continues to insist on him drinking it, but Chang King throws the medicine away and tells Xiang his affairs are none of her business. Xiang gets offended and tells her maids to arrest Chang King, but Chang King asks why she'd send such hideous maids to arrest her. Under Xiang's instruction, the ogres in wigs chase down Chang King, but they're unable to stop him. When Chang King gets away, she tells Xiang he'll back again to watch her impressive dancing. Angered, Xiang tells him she'll regret being so cocky to her. Later, Chang King arrives at the Imperial prison to visit his family in his true form. Inside the prison, the Su family gets a feast for dinner, and they wonder if it's meant to be their last meal. Chang King's father, Dafu, asks if their execution is being moved up, while his aunt and uncle insist they've been wrongfully accused. Chang King tells everyone to keep it down as he reveals his identity, which shocks his mother, Yufeng. Chang King informs them of the Emperor's decree to review their case, but his parents assume he's delusional and tell him to escape to a place where no one knows him and change his name. Chang King's aunt disagrees and says Chang King is the only one who could help clear their names. Dofu points out that his son is as useful as the gum under his shoe, causing an argument with his sister. Then, Chang King's cousin, Xingchai speaks up and agrees with Dofu that Chang King has zero connections and abilities, so trusting him is the same as death. Chang King couldn't believe his own family thought he was trash. However, Xingchai told him the best he could do was get his little sister, Jingyao, out of prison because even at her age, several noble lords were already waiting for her. Jingyao reminded Xingchai that Chang King had said the emperor ordered for their case to be reviewed. Chang King assures her that the truth will soon be revealed, while Xingchai warns him to be careful about the powerful people out there. He then suggests that Chang King start investigating the Chen family, but Chang King hasn't heard of them before. He suddenly hears footsteps and says he has to leave. His aunt expects they'll be executed tomorrow since Chang King is a spoiled brat who can't guarantee their safety. Just then, a prison guard arrives and informs the Su family that the emperor has requested a review of their case. The family can't believe their ears, and Jingyao cries tears of joy as she's the only one who believes Chang King will save them. Outside the prison, Chang King changes his appearance and asks the guard if there's a chance the Su family's conviction might be overturned. The guard assumes Chang King is new, so he explains that the case was resolved by Lord Beihu with solid evidence, so there's no way it can be overturned. Later, Chang King returns to the emperor's chamber, realizing the Su family case was no simple matter. Lord Beihu was one of the 4 envoys of the imperial family who were not solely at the emperor's command. Suddenly, Bailing runs out crying. When Chang King asks what's wrong, Bailing laments that the emperor defiled her. Chang King immediately wonders if Jinyu has what it takes to bend Bailing over. Bailing then suggested she take Chang King's place in serving the emperor. Chang King figured Jinyu must be deceiving the little dimwit and wondered why Jinyu didn't invite him to the show. Later, Jinyu spots Chang King and asks why he isn't in Jinyu's chambers, so Chang King says he missed her too much to sleep. Jinyu is glad to hear this and pulls him so close that Chang King starts to wonder who's wearing the balls here. Jinyu then stretches her hand toward him and declares that her consort is indeed beautiful. Chang King wonders if it's really okay to kiss the emperor, but fears that he might be beheaded for it. He quickly pulls away and tells Jinyu she should get some rest since it's late. Jinyu pulls his face back and insists she hasn't seen enough of his face, so Chang King points out that she's pretty much flattering herself. Jinyu says she can't resist a kiss, and this time Chang King figures he might as well get some, but before he can, Jinyu says it's time to get to work. She stares him down and asks if he seriously thought she would kiss him, while Chang King internally dies of embarrassment. Chang King asks if that's how she defiled Bailing, so Jinyu explains that she made her dance in a few scraps of clothes. Chang King pictures it and calls it a scumbag move, so Jinyu insists it was no big deal since she can dance way better. Chang King asks if he'll get to see her dancing, so Jinyu tells him to finish the memorials first and they'll discuss. Chang King laments that his value is worth more than a dance, but when Jinyu tells him he doesn't need to watch, Chang King suddenly grows a passion for reviewing memorials. The next morning, Chang King finally finishes reviewing the memorials and plans to take a quick nap. He finds Jinyu asleep on the bed and can't wait to witness her dance, but for now, he settles on sleeping on the floor. Later, Jinyu gets dressed as the emperor and brags about how much work she got done last night. Chang King accuses her of taking all the credit, so Jinyu promises to dance for him after she practices. Later at the Su family inn, Chang King shows up in his true form for the retrial. There, Beihu asked if it was true that the Su family sold inferior goods during the relief effort for charity. When they plead guilty, the witnesses become outraged at the sins of the rich. Beihu also asks if it's true that they sold rat meat as lamb causing the plague, and again, they plead guilty. The crowds begin to call for the court to annihilate the Su family, making Chang King wonder who was targeting them. Beihu then states that the evidence is irrefutable and closes the case, causing Chang King to rush out and think of a way to stop them from filing the case report. He figures the only way he can stall the case is if a new lead emerges, but he wonders how he can inform a large number of people immediately. Suddenly, he gets an idea and offers the local gossip guy some tea to help him relax. The idiot backed a drink from a stranger and suddenly felt the need to take a dump. Moments later, Chang King appears as the gossip guy and brings up the Su family case. When the crowd gets interested, the man reveals that the last member of the Su family is on the loose and is said to have evidence that can clear the Su family's name. The crowd begins to demand more information, so Chang King fakes another diarrhea episode and runs off. Meanwhile, Beihu prepares to present the Su family's conviction to the emperor, when one of the servants reports that the Su family's fugitive master holds evidence that could clear their name. Beihu immediately puts the case on hold and asks them to find the source of the rumor. Later, the gossip twat insists that he rushed to the bathroom and got knocked out, so Beihu figures the fugitive Su master must be the one who spread the rumor. He then orders his men to do whatever it takes to find Chang King. Later at the emperor's chamber, Jinyu catches Chang King sneaking in and asks where he went. Chang King claims he went to buy Jinyu a sweet treat and he only took a bite out of it to make sure it wasn't poisoned. Chang King hands it over and Jinyu accepts, but warns that he'll be punished if he leaves without reporting in advance. Chang King plans to leave when a maid suddenly announces that consort Xiang has fainted at the door. Jinyu steps out and reminds Xiang that she was to return to her chambers. Xiang claims that consort Jinyu bullied her and asks for justice, so the emperor asks what consort Jinyu did to her. Xiang cooks up a story of how she asked Jinyu how to serve the emperor better, but Jinyu threw hot soup at her, which Xiang narrowly dodged. Jinyu asks Chang King if this is true, so Chang King denies it and says Xiang served him an abortion drug. Xiang says Chang King is lying and even pulls out a dress that's been stained with splashes of soup. Chang King says that wasn't the dress she was wearing, but when Jinyu asks what she wore, he can't remember. Xiang figures she has the upper hand with all the evidence, but the emperor asks how she dared to feed his beloved abortion medicine and lie about it. Xiang can't believe her ears and accuses the emperor of showing favoritism. The emperor asks Xiang how she could harm the one he favors and expect to live, so Xiang changes her tone and begs for forgiveness for her mistake. Both Jinyu and Chang King are surprised by the switch-up, while Xiang turns to Chang King and asks him to plead for mercy on her behalf. Chang King asks Jinyu to forgive her, so Jinyu agrees, but warns Xiang that if she tries it again, her life is as good as gone. Xiang thanks them for their mercy and walks off, while Chang King asks Jinyu when she plans to fulfill her promise. Jinyu says her dance can only be seen at night, which gets Chang King excited. However, she tells him to review the memorials first, so Chang King decides to trust her one more time and agrees to do it. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Guard, Beihu gets a report that there's no trace of Chang King, so Beihu gets enraged that his lackeys can't even capture a spoiled brat. Later at the Emperor's chamber, Jinyu tells Chang King that even the Emperor should take breaks, so she invites him to watch her dance. When Jinyu gets extra touchy, Chang King wonders if his dreams are finally coming true. Moments later, Jinyu asks Chang King what he thinks of her dance, but since she's literally behind a screen, Chang King realizes he waited all day to see nothing. Jinyu asks how he intends to punish her bad behavior, so he tells her to remove the screen door so he can have a good look. Shockingly, Jinyu does as she's told, and Chang King wonders why she's acting unusual. Jinyu gets close and asks if he wants to dance, causing Chang King to squirm under the eclipse of her chest. Chang King tries to weasel out of it, but Jinyu insists that he can't hope to play a convincing Jinyu if he doesn't learn how to dance. With this, she offers to teach him how to dance and starts bending him like a straw. She then instructs that he needs to form a sisterly bond with Xiang, with him as the master. Chang King says such matters should be discussed at another time, so Jinyu agrees to leave him for now but promises to teach him another time. Jinyu then suggests they exchange their daily experiences so they can be completely flawless. When Chang King agrees, Jinyu asks what he did that day. Chang King says he visited some inns and taverns and brought back a treat for Jinyu. When Jinyu asks if that is all, Chang King insists that his days are as dull and boring as that. He asks how her day went too, so Jinyu explains that in court, all the officials unanimously submitted a petition to eliminate consort Jinyu. Chang King asks if they wanted to unalive him or Jinyu, but Jinyu said there was no difference and insists she didn't agree with it. She tells Chang King to attend court from now on, but Chang King says he'll be doomed if a commoner like him is caught impersonating the emperor. Jinyu promises to teach him well, but allows him to rest for now. The next morning, Chang King wakes up and finds a note from Jinyu saying she'll attend court. Chang King laments how his life is now in potential danger and plans to stay vigilant so he can escape at the first sign of trouble. Suddenly, Xiang shows up, jealous that consort Jinyu got to spend the night with the emperor again. However, she calls her maid to present gifts to Jinyu. Xiang displays all her treasured jewelry and tells Chang King to pick anyone as an apology for her disrespect. Chang King sees Xiang has spared no expense in sucking up to him, so he calls her his younger sister and accepts a hairpin. Xiang agrees to give it to her, so Chang King promises to remember her kindness and tells Xiang to inform him if she needs anything. As he leaves, Xiang invites him to her chambers for a long talk, but deep down, Xiang is pissed that consort Jinyu accepted her gift and called herself the older sister. Xiang's servant asks if she's really okay with giving away the hairpin, but Xiang assures her she won't be taken advantage of so easily. Later, Chang King reports the update on his relationship with Xiang, and Jinyu is impressed by his skills. Chang King asks how her day went, so she says it was the usual, with the officials refusing to stand until she executes consort Jinyu. Chang King asks if they're all meddling a bit too much, but Jinyu says it's normal since they all want their preferred consort to be empress. Chang King asks what the officials wanted and how she responded, so Jinyu explains that they pressured her with threats of retirement, but she ignored them. She then worries about them upsetting the relationship between Jinyu and Xiang. Chang King wonders why she would suddenly bring that up, so he assures her that nothing intimate is going on with Xiang, but Jinyu tells him not to flatter himself. Chang King then hands her the hairpin from Xiang, and Jinyu wonders if it's a bribe. Chang King reminds her that she's the most powerful in the kingdom and can't be bribed, but he thought it would be a fitting gift. When she tries it on, Chang King looks pleased and continues to praise her good looks. Jinyu says she wants to introduce him to the officials, but Chang King figures she's just trying to get him to court. He claims he has memorials to review, but Jinyu insists that there's plenty of time. Moments later, Jinyu shows him a portrait of Prince Yan, the only prince of non-royal descent, and consort Luo's grandfather. Chang King insists on leaving to take a bath, but Jinyu pulls him back and sits on his lap. As Chang King's brain cells scatter and lose their purpose, Jinyu continues to explain the history of Prince Yan. She then shows him a portrait of the current prime minister, the father of consort Xia, who he should pay close attention to. After, Jinyu tries to leave, but Chang King insists she stay and keep him awake. Jinyu reminds him that he should be more concerned about consort Jinyu's life, but Chang King pulls her close and guarantees her safety. Jinyu concedes and says she'll take a short nap on him. Chang King wonders if it's a trick, but with such a beautiful woman on him, it's a win-win. As he goes over the memorials, he sees another request to execute Jinyu, which pisses him off. He then responds by saying even wild beasts respect each other's mates, how much more humans? Lastly, he sees a memorial from Beihu stating that Su Chang King has been captured and will be executed by noon the next day. Chang King realizes it would be hard to reopen the case once it's closed, but since he can't give away his identity, he decides he must leave the palace the next day. The next day at court, Jinyu asks the officials if they have any reports. Zhu Hong speaks up and asks the emperor to consider dumping Jinyu like an unwanted newborn, so the emperor asks what crime Jinyu has committed. The other officials accuse Jinyu of causing the emperor to be bedridden, which is a grave offense, but the emperor insists he'll take care of it and warns them not to bring it up again. Hong wonders just how beautiful Jinyu is to have the emperor in a chokehold, but based on last night's review, he and the other officials admit their wrongdoings. Jinyu is shocked by how quickly they surrendered and feels something might be off. She had forgotten to check last night's review and figures Chang King must have said something harsh. Meanwhile, in the busy streets of the capital, Beihu prepares to publicly execute the Su family. He orders Chang King to be dragged out, so a boy similar to the real Chang King is thrown on the platform, causing Chang King's mom and Jingyoi to cry out for him. A man from the crowd declares that it would be a waste to execute Jingyoi. Another man backs him up and states that by law, the women should be sent to the Bureau of Entertainment. The other man recognizes him as Master Chen, so Chen demands to have Jingyoi to himself and offers to pay any amount for it. Meanwhile, Beihu concludes that the real Chang King is a coward who can't even show up for his family, so he orders their execution. Just then, Chang King shows up and calls the Imperial Guards incompetent for settling for a substitute. Beihu shouts at him angrily, so Chang King calls him out on torturing an innocent man for looking like him. Beihu says it was merely a tactic to get him to reveal himself, but Chang King insists that there is no official to rely on and laughs at them. This angers Beihu, who leaps up to attack him. However, Chang King calmly dodges all his attacks and taunts him for having such underwhelming abilities. Beihu promises to catch him, so Chang King pulls out a memorial and claims it's the evidence they've been pursuing him for. He then tosses it over to Beihu, but when Beihu looks inside, he only finds meaningless scribbles. Beihu realizes he's been tricked, so Chang King tells him to catch him if he's got what it takes. At this, Beihu hands the memorial to his servants and chases after Chang King. Moments later, as the servants look through the memorial, Behu returns and tells them to burn the memorial. The servants wonder what's going on, but Behu snaps at them to burn the book at once, causing them to run off. It turns out this Behu is actually Chang King in disguise and intends to frame Behu too. Later at the pacification division, another envoy, King Long, asks why the investigation is being rushed and why they needed a fake Chang King if they had solid evidence. Behu explains that it was just a scheme to catch Chang King, but another envoy, Xuan Wu, accuses Behu of making them look incompetent at their job. King Long asks about the booklet Chang King left behind, but Behu says the book was completely blank and useless. King Long asks Behu to hand over the booklet, so Behu asks the servants to bring the book. When the servants try to signal Behu, King Long tells them to speak without concealing anything. The servants nervously agree and reveal that Behu had told them to burn the book and not tell anyone. Behu immediately denies it and almost knocks their teeth out till King Long tells him to sit down. King Long asks them if the book contained any information, so the servants say no, but there were signs of some torn pages. Behu insists this was part of Chang King's scheme, and he never ordered them to burn it. Xuan Wu asks how Behu could fail to capture Chang King, making Behu wonder if they're beginning to suspect him. King Long puts an end to the bickering and tells Behu he's no longer in charge of the Su family case as he'll oversee it himself. Since Behu can't be ruled out as a suspect, he tells Xuan Wu to keep an eye on Behu. After hearing this, Behu swears to capture Chang King at all costs. Back at the Emperor's chamber, Jinyu goes through some books when Chang King arrives with some more treats. Jinyu seems to be in a bad mood, so he asks if something happened in court again. He then displays special chestnuts for Jinyu, but she wonders how she can eat something so hard. Chang King offers to peel the hard parts off, so Jinyu teases him for wanting to feed her and grants him the opportunity. However, when Chang King tries to put it in her mouth, she bites him. Chang King calls Jinyu ruthless for biting him, but she says he's the one who's ruthless for leaving her alone all day. Chang King asks Jinyu to stay by his side like last night, but she manages to weasel out of it. She then informs him he'll be coming to court with her the next day. The next day, Chang King acts as the Emperor's guard as Jinyu attends court. Zhu Hong then reports the incident at the Su family execution when Chang King showed up with evidence. Chang King wonders if Zhu Hong is about to advocate for his family, but Zhu Hong reports that the 4 envoys allowed Chang King to claim there were no officials to rely on, so the envoys should be punished. Upon hearing this, Jinyu insists that Chang King is to be captured and publicly executed, shocking Chang King. Zhu Hang agrees but insists the 4 envoys must also be held accountable and punished. Prince Yan agrees with Zhu Hang, so the rest of the ministers begin calling for the envoys' punishment. Jinyu offers to investigate the matter of the envoys herself, but the ministers insist that they won't stand up if she doesn't make an immediate decision. Before Jinyu can respond, Prince Yanj agrees with Jinyu and calls for the public execution of Chang King to silence public unrest. Chang King remembers that Yanj is Jinyu's half-brother, but figures that he's simply hiding his ill intentions. Yanj asks for temporary permission to mobilize the envoys so they can capture Chang King, so Jinyu gives the okay. Later, Chang King tells Jinyu she's really in a precarious position, but he doubts they'll be able to outwit her. He then points out that Yanj is obviously plotting to seize control of the envoys and wonders if trusting him is a good idea. Jinyu explains that even if they capture Chang King, he would likely die unexpectedly and Yanj would lose his control of the envoys. Chang King then suggests they restructure the envoys and exonerate the Su family. Jinyu points out how concerned Chang King is of the Su family, but Chang King grabs her and claims that he's only concerned about anything that would benefit her. Jinyu quickly pushes him off and reminds him he's acting as a guard. Chang King blames Jinyu for being too beautiful and awakening the dragon in his pants. In response, Jinyu says she'll show him something even more beautiful later and tells him to get changed. Chang King feels relieved. However, Jinyu informs him that no matter what happens to the Su family, Chang King must die, leaving Chang King terrified. Later in the garden, Chang King poses as the Emperor as Jinyu shows up in a dress that leaves him speechless. Jinyu notices someone watching from the background and sits on Chang King's lap, so Chang King immediately plays along and greets her fondly. They begin to flirt with each other as usual when Jinyu warns Chang King to behave himself. She then turns to Chang King and asks him to paint a picture for her. Chang King says he's better with poetry, so Jinyu asks him to express his feelings in a poem. Chang King warns that the other consorts might get even more jealous, but Jinyu insists that he can't be that good. Chang King is determined to prove her wrong and writes a poem on the spot. When Jinyu takes a look, she asks if he's so good at it because he's used it to pick up other women. However, Chang King insists that he was only inspired by her beauty. Suddenly, Bailing arrives and asks what they're up to. Jinyu rushes to show off her poem, and when Bailing reads through the words, she can't believe a creep like the Emperor could be so smooth. Bailing figures Jinyu must be enchanted by the Emperor's words, especially when she asks for the poem back. Jinyu laments that there's only one poem, causing Chang King to figure she must be hinting at him. He then offers to write her another one, so Jinyu promises to thank him properly at night. When Bailing sees them making googly eyes at each other, she figures it's over for Jinyu. Moments later, Jinyu blushes over another poem, while Chang King simps over her beauty. Bailing watches like a third wheel on Valentine's Day, so she tells Jinyu not to be deceived by the Emperor's insincere words. Jinyu worries that Bailing doesn't think her beauty deserves such praise, so she tells Chang King to write 10 more poems till Bailing thinks he's sincere. Chang King then assures her that he could never grow tired of simping away on her. Just then, Consort Luo shows up with some snacks for the Emperor. Jinyu then tells her she arrived just in time, as the Emperor would be hungry from writing so many poems. Jinyu says she's been wanting to try her snacks for a while and shoves one of the cookies in her mouth. She then commends Luo, who's fighting back the urge to slap her. Jinyu offers some of the cookies to Chang King, who thanks her for personally feeding her. Luo can't believe that her cookies are now helping Jinyu gain favor with the Emperor, so she tries to save face by announcing how much the Emperor loves her cooking. Luo offers to send some to Jinyu so she doesn't pig out with the Emperor's cookies, so Jinyu asks for the recipe instead. Luo panics since the snacks were made in the Imperial kitchen, so she changes the subject to the poems and asks to see. Luo reads through the masterpiece and asks if it was really the Emperor that delivered so much riz on a page. Luo asks how she never knew of his talents, so Jinyu explains that they were specially written for her. Luo gets jealous and asks the Emperor to write one for her, but before he can respond, Jinyu gives him the death stare, which makes him reconsider. Luo complains of the Emperor being too partial to Jinyu, but Jinyu assures her that the Emperor is just tired from bending over backward to please her. She even offers to give him a massage. When Luo sees this, she finally throws in the towel and storms off. Later that night, Jinyu asks Chang King for more poems, but Chang King says he's fresh out of ideas. Jinyu asks if he's not preserving his ink for the most beautiful girl in the capital, Consort Luo. However, Chang King assures her that the so-called beauty is only fit to carry her shoes. Once Jinyu is satisfied with the flattery, she tells him to get some rest and tries to leave, but Chang King reminds her of the reward she promised him for all those poems. Jinyu claims she's too tired to remember, but Chang King insists it's been a while since he last saw her dance. When Jinyu doesn't budge, Chang King agrees to let her rest so he can check in on the Su family case. Suddenly, Jinyu kisses Chang King on the cheek and tells him to rest well. Chang King gets flustered as he wonders if this is her way of making it up to him, so he thanks her for her kind gesture. Pleased, Jinyu breaks the news that he has to attend court the next day, and Chang King snaps back to reality. The next day in court, Zhu Hong praises the Emperor on his literary riz, while Chang King is surprised they've spread this far. However, Zhu Hong insists that the poems could harm the Emperor's reputation and suggests that Jinyu be expelled from the palace. Chang King gives him a cold look and promises to expel the next person who suggests getting rid of Jinyu. The entire court is shocked, while Chang King plans to leave the mess for Jinyu to sort. He then asks Prince Yanj how the Su family investigation is going, so Yanj says he's entrusted the Beihu envoy with it. At this, Chang King figures he'll need to meet with the envoy himself. Later, Beihu receives a message inviting him to a meeting with Prince Yanj. However, when Beihu goes to the meeting, Chang King actually impersonates the prince. Beihu then informs him that they'll surely capture Chang King before tomorrow's execution. When Beihu apologizes for all the slip-ups in eliminating the Su family, Chang King realizes the prince must be trying to make sure there's nothing left to investigate. Next, Beihu hands him the confiscated assets of another family and promises to secure even more from other rich families. Chang King then figures Yanj must be trying to amass wealth and frame competitors. Beihu asks for his orders, so Chang King tells him to present evidence to clear their name on the day of the execution. When Beihu asks why he's changing the plans, Chang King explains that he's giving him an opportunity to gain the Emperor's favor by opposing the prince. Beihu agrees to act as an undercover agent, so Chang King instructs him to wait till he contacts him from now on. Later, Chang King sneaks back into the emperor's chamber and is surprised that Jinyu isn't there. He asks the servant outside who visited, and she tells him many consorts stopped by, including Shiya, who sent some food. However, Jinyu did not stop by. Chang King wonders what this means, so he heads to Jinyu's chamber. There, Chang King asks why she didn't come to visit, so Jinyu says she didn't want to interrupt in case he had someone else he was seeing tonight. Chang King insists she's the only one in his eyes and asks her to come back with him, so she agrees. On the way, Jinyu says she's cold and tells Chang King to carry her. Chang King warns that it might be inappropriate for others to see, but Jinyu reminds him she's supposed to be the only one in his eyes. Chang King concedes and carries her, so Jinyu asks what he did all day. Chang King says he rested in his chambers all day and refused all visitors, even Shiya's food. He then turns to Jinyu and tells her the moonlight is highlighting her beauty even more. Jinyu asked if he was trying to kiss her, and when he admitted it, she told him he'd have to show his true face first. Chang King wonders if she's trying to lure him into revealing his identity, so he points out that anyone can see them. Jinyu tells him to take her to a secluded place, but Chang King suddenly remembers he has memorials to attend to. Jinyu climbs down and says she wants to remain outside with him for longer. She then leans in for a kiss and asks if he wants to finish what they began earlier. Chang King struggles to resist the temptation, but Jinyu insists he'd need to show his true face to get some. Chang King considers changing into a random face, but when Jinyu reveals it's her first time, he feels bad about trying to deceive her. Instead, he suggests they head inside and rest. Since Chang King refuses to be honest with her, Jinyu agrees to head back and tells him to focus on the memorials properly. As they leave, Chang King plans to resolve his family's case so he can leave the palace quickly. Jinyu then tells Chang King she'll attend court as the emperor while he soothes the other consorts. The next day, Chang King visits Bailing in her chambers. Bailing insists that the emperor must be brainwashing her and suggests she stay over for a while. When Chang King pictures them sharing a bed, he begins to consider it till he pictures Jinyu's death glare and changes his mind. Bailing wonders if Jinyu has truly fallen for the emperor when Chang King asks her for a favor. He asks her to testify that he's been in her chambers if he's ever found missing from his, so Bailing promises to keep his secret. With this, Chang King prepares to deal with Prince Yanj properly. Is Jinyu playing Chang King, or is she really falling for him? Comment "My Beloved" to find out in part 2. Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to the channel for similar content. And as always, thanks for watching.